All right, the anniversary of June 4th just passed, and Secretary of State Rubio issued a statement. Most people just glance at it and move on, but that's not the case. Even though it's only a few lines, it really deserves a careful analysis. There's some major significance in there. It represents the real China policy of the Trump administration. And then, after the California elections, well, a few days later, 3 days later, now we're finally starting to see the bigger picture emerge. What's going on here? That's another topic everyone wants to talk about. And then there's also the Strait of Hormuz. So the US escort fleet is changing formation. What will the outcome be? And then the last piece of news is also pretty big. There might be a turning point in the Russia Ukraine war. Zelensky has sent an open letter directly to Putin. What's going on there? Welcome to another episode brought to you by Fang Wei. This is the Morning America show. Hello, YouTube friends and Sound of Hope FM 96.1 listeners. I'm back from vacation and still finding my footing, which is why we're starting a few minutes late today. There's plenty of news to cover as I get back on track. If you like logical news analysis, please subscribe to Sandfon Time, especially if you're new here. And for our longtime viewers, please help by sharing. Share it as much as you can so that more Chinese-speaking friends can understand what's going on in today's rapidly changing world. So, what do I want to talk to you about today? Honestly, there's just so much news since it's been 2 or 3 days since the last update. So, here's what I'm thinking. I need to catch up on all of this, and I think catching up is really meaningful. These are all part of the many changes happening in this fast-moving world. All right, let's get straight to the point. Let's talk about the anniversary of June 4th. Senator Rubio has issued a statement. This happened yesterday, but I'm just now discussing it. Why? Well, yesterday was the 37th anniversary of June 4th. US Secretary of State Rubio issued a statement, and the text was just 150 words. How should I put it? Let me read it out for everyone. June 4th marks the world's commemoration of the Chinese Communist Party ordering the military to attack thousands of peaceful protesters in Tiananmen Square and the surrounding areas. On the 37th anniversary, Chinese students, workers, and other civilians demanded democratic reforms by exercising their natural rights and lost their lives in the pursuit of accountability for corruption. We remember their lives and honor their legacy. No amount of censorship can erase the memory of those who sacrificed themselves to defend their inalienable rights to free speech and peaceful assembly. One day, justice will be served. This statement is brief and powerful, with a clear stance, but can you tell if there's anything special about it? I'm asking everyone a question here. If you notice anything, feel free to leave a comment and let me know. Now, let me share my thoughts on this statement. Compared to most people just think it's reading from a script because every US administration, from Biden to Trump 1.0 to Obama to George W. Bush to Clinton to George H.W. Bush, almost every year they issue 6 statements like this. So it's really just another one, right? And it's so short, isn't it? Okay, so I actually went and checked all the statements from previous administrations. I noticed that these statements, well, the ones issued by Secretary of State Rubio, have 2 features that none of the previous statements had. The first feature, which I already mentioned, is that they're especially short, just 150 words. It's the shortest statement in over 30 years. It's concise and to the point. What's the second feature? The reason it's so short, how should I put it? Because in all the previous administration statements, besides commemorating and remembering, there were always long sections addressing the Chinese communist regime. We hope you will do this and that. We call on you to do this and that. We urge you to do this and that. Did y'all notice? This time, none of that was included. None of it at all. In the end, it just says that justice will ultimately be served, and that's it. There's no urging, hoping, or calling on the other side for anything. Why is that? Why do you think that is? In my view, it's because this administration, the Trump administration, has no hope, no urging, and no appeals for the Chinese Communist Party. None at all. So he just doesn't say it. It's also because, as the descendant of Cuban refugees after the communist takeover, Secretary of State Rubio knows that a communist regime is beyond saving. So there's no point in saying all that useless nonsense to them. Because he doesn't waste words, the statement is especially short. But short doesn't necessarily mean weak. On the contrary, when you keep it brief, it's actually more forceful. Nobody can miss any of the information. Actually, just now in this statement, there were some phrases that even previous presidents, secretaries of state never said before. Commemorating the Chinese Communist Party ordering the military to attack Tiananmen Square. This phrase has never been used before. It was always the Chinese government. Rubio said the Chinese Communist Party ordered the military to attack Tiananmen Square. Take note of this. This is an important point I want to talk about next, a key detail that follows from the two characteristics I just mentioned. Professor Zhang Tianling and I actually did a dialogue style program about this. All right, so speaking of Trump's speech at the Great Hall of the People on May 14th, Trump's speech was really impressive. He quoted classics and used six moving historical anecdotes to illustrate how China and the US have treated each other kindly throughout history. From the very first US envoy to China to the inscription in Chinese from Ningbo Prefecture during the Qing Dynasty that was gifted to the Washington Monument in the US, praising President Washington from the Chinese side, to Benjamin Franklin's admiration for Confucian teachings and his introduction of Confucius's teachings to the American people, to the Chinese laborers from Guangdong who helped build the Transcontinental Railroad in the United States, including the joint efforts of China and the US in fighting against Japan during World War II, and so on and so forth. It also includes what is called the Boxer Indemnity, right? The Exentry Treaty, and after the Eight-Nation Alliance entered Beijing, the Boxer Indemnity, America returned the Boxer Indemnity to China, which led to the establishment of Tsinghua College and later Tsinghua University. But all these references stopped before 1949. In other words, all of Trump's goodwill is directed everyone. Listen carefully to what I'm saying here. I believe my interpretation is accurate. It's not just wishful thinking on my part. All of Trump's goodwill is directed toward the Chinese people. It's not directed at the Chinese Communist Party. After Nixon's visit to China in 1972, the four US presidents, Nixon, Ford, Carter, and Reagan, all provided aid to the Chinese Communist Party. In science, technology, agriculture, and even the military, the aid far surpassed all the goodwill the United States had ever shown to China in its history. It was way more than the return of the Boxer Indemnity, and far more than the founding of Tsinghua University. But President Trump didn't mention a single word about this. Why is that? Because President Trump wanted to send a subtle message to the Chinese people through the speech. That message is about the friendship between the United States and China. It's about the friendship between the American people and the Chinese people, definitely not the friendship between the United States and the Chinese Communist regime, or between the United States and the Chinese Communist government. Do you see the difference? On the surface, Trump still had to use stalling tactics like saying, Xi Jinping is my good friend. This was to keep the Chinese Communist Party from flipping the table, because Trump needed time to make America strong again. But his real intentions were hinted out through these subtle messages. So it's just like Rubio's six statements, which all hinted at the same thing. He never said, the world commemorates the Chinese government's order to the military to do such and such. That's what every previous US administration has always said. Instead, he said, the world commemorates the Chinese Communist Party, ordering the military to attack Tiananmen Square. And also, there was none of that, what do you call it, expectation or urging or anything like that. So the implication is the same. President Trump's speech on May 14th, 2015, carried the same meaning as Rubio's six statements. When we speak, we are only addressing the Chinese people. We are not making these kinds of public statements to the Chinese Communist regime. So this is what President Trump truly meant. So if we understand what he's saying, shouldn't we spread the word? Otherwise, I feel like President Trump would be speaking in vain, right? Because all he can do is hint. After all, he's still mingling with people in Beijing, sharing drinks and meals, trying to speak as one friend to another. But the real meaning is exactly what I just explained. At least that's how I see it. Yeah, right. I really think we need to spread the word. Below is the link to my conversation with Professor Zhang Tianlang. I hope everyone can share this program as much as possible, not for the sake of promoting Fang Wei time, and not for Professor Zhang. It's to spread the well-intentioned message from President Trump of the United States. I hope this program can reach everyone, all Chinese people everywhere. Actually, it's not just all Chinese people, but all Americans as well. This is President Trump's real attitude toward China policy. That's how I see it. Do you agree? If you do, please give it a like and share it with more friends. If you don't agree, if you think there's a flaw in what I said and my judgment or reasoning, you're also welcome to leave a comment. If you disagree, if you think, I don't agree with what you're saying, you're reading too much into this, feel free to say so. Let's have a discussion about this. But honestly, if my judgment is correct, President Trump's attitude, along with Rubio's, is really something we should try to spread as quickly as possible. Given the current state of international relations and the world situation, President Trump can't say things outright, but he's working hard to hint at what he really means. All right, let's talk about another related topic. After 37 years since June 4th, can the Chinese Communist Party really erase people's memories? The Washington Post published an article with some really interesting stories, and the significance of these stories runs deep. Let me share my interpretation with everyone. Of course, before I get into my interpretation, let me first say this. A lot of viewers, especially our longtime audience, already know about the wild red sea cucumbers from Jeju Island. Their health supplement collagen is extremely valuable, and the supply is limited. Plus, there are so many returning customers that it's often in short supply. So why do people keep coming back for more? It's very simple. It's because it works, it's effective, and people can feel the difference in their bodies. For example, we have a viewer in New Jersey, Miss Justin, who's 72 years old. She specifically reached out to share with us that 2 years ago, after she got COVID, she just couldn't get her strength back. Her health never fully recovered. Later, she saw our show on Red Sea Cucumber, tried a box, and halfway through, she felt a difference. She said her complexion was glowing. Her energy also became much better. Doing housework and going out for exercise both became a lot easier for her. Later, she even called us specifically to make another purchase, and she said she was truly grateful that we recommended such a great product to her. The reason is that the Red Sea Cucumber Wellness Gel contains small molecule collagen peptides, sea cucumber saponins, and multi-chain chondroitin sulfate. These are all the best things to support daily energy, a healthy complexion, normal metabolism, and physical recovery. It uses a patented low temperature enzymatic hydrolysis process from Korea, which is different from the regular high temperature boiling method used for sea cucumbers. The latter destroys the nutrients, while the former preserves them more completely and breaks them down into smaller molecules, making them easier to absorb. So, if you feel like you don't have as much energy as before, get tired easily, have a dull complexion, or if you have elders at home who need long term health maintenance, you should really look into this. For old friends you want to supplement regularly every month, if you're worried about it going out of stock, I recommend setting up a subscription just to avoid running out. I suggest activating the subscription service so it can be delivered to your home on a regular basis, making things even more convenient and worry-free. If you enter the anti-counterfeit promo code FENGWEI, just the pinyin for Feng Wei, you can enjoy an 85% discount with the subscription plan. Starting from the second month, the lowest discount is 80%. One last reminder, since everyone's body is different, the effects may vary. This product is a nutritional supplement. It's not a medicine and cannot replace medication or medical treatment. All right, let's talk about this next. I think this Washington Post article is really worth discussing. Its main topic is, can the Chinese Communist Party really erase the memory of June 4th? We all know that on June 4th, 1989, the CCP sent tanks into the streets of Beijing. They ordered the military to open fire directly on students and workers fighting for democracy, including running over unarmed civilians with tanks. This created the shocking event known at home and abroad as the Tiananmen Square Massacre. For the past 37 years, the Chinese Communist authorities have been covering up the truth about this massacre. Their method is to erase the June 4th tragedy from the memory of the Chinese people, to wipe it out from the minds of the younger generation of Chinese. They want the youth to forget this ever happened, and they've mostly succeeded. That's why, when asking Chinese youth about June 4th, they just look confused, like, what's that? But even so, unexpected events have sparked new interest among the youth. They're searching for and trying to uncover the truth about June 4th. That's exactly how the Washington Post reported it. Of course, this is something we've known for a long time. They're talking about something that happened 4 years ago. On June 3rd, 2022, a student in Zhejiang was watching something. At that time, the well-known live streamer, the top-selling host or lipstick king Li Jiaqi, was doing a live stream. During the stream, Li Jiaqi showed a cake shaped like a tank, and as a result, the live stream was immediately cut off. So what about this young man? He was 18 years old now, right? A few years ago, he was 14. He told the Washington Post that he was completely confused when the live stream was suddenly cut off, so he tried every way he could to get over the firewall and find out what had happened. What was the real reason behind this? So what happened? Here's what he said, word for word. He said, "When the truth was revealed, what I saw was not just the blood and tears of history, but also the collapse of the worldview I'd held onto for more than a decade." He said that, out of fear of retaliation, he requested to remain anonymous, but now he wants to leave China. So what about this February? During the Winter Olympics, the American figure skater Alyssa Liu, right? After she won the gold medal, people realized that she was the daughter of a Tiananmen student leader who had fled to the United States and raised her there. How did people find out? When Alyssa Liu won the gold medal in Milan, someone on Chinese social media started criticizing her, saying her father was a traitor. But then someone else said, hey, her dad raised an Olympic champion with a global perspective. Why the criticism? Curious youth looked him up, hopping the firewall to dig into his background. They discovered the world of June 4th. So the truth quietly spreads like this in China. There's a political scientist at UC San Diego named Margaret Roberts. She said that accidental leaks about the Tiananmen incident often come from entertainment content. When politics and entertainment collide, it becomes really hard for censors to handle. Take Li Jiaqi's tank-shaped cake, for example. We all know that little boys, well, boys in general, there's no boy who doesn't like tanks, right? Can the CCP ban tank images online? Sure, but the minefield just keeps growing. The forbidden zone expands. First, it was just June 4th, then all tanks, and soon even Lumatian. What's next? What about figure skating? Will that become off limits too? Will the Winter Olympics become a forbidden topic? Right, everything will have to become off limits. So all of this is because they want to cover up the truth. This is just my analysis, not something from the Washington Post, okay? Because they want to hide the truth, the result is that the boundaries of what you can talk about keep getting pushed further and further out. But the bigger this forbidden zone gets, the easier it is to bump into it, right? The more people run into it, the bigger it has to become. This is an inevitable consequence of trying to cover up the truth. Actually, covering up the truth is an extremely risky thing to do. In my view, the result is just piling up more and more dead. The more you hide, the longer you keep the world in the dark, the greater the risk you bring upon yourself. Because the people are faced with a forbidden zone that keeps expanding. It will only trigger ever increasing curiosity and a constant drive to seek out the truth. Because curiosity is like hunger, it needs to be satisfied. In the end, it actually becomes a huge driving force for spreading the truth. So going back to the Washington Post report, they called this a curiosity bomb. A bomb filled with curiosity. A curiosity bomb. The more forbidden zones there are, the stronger this curiosity becomes, and the bigger the bomb gets. Eventually, it could turn into a massive nuclear bomb that blows up the regime. That's my view. Some people say, what's so special about the truth? You can't wake up the Chinese people. Aren't there plenty of Chinese who have already seen the truth but still remain indifferent? No, that's not the case. I think that's a conclusion you've drawn based on your own limited experience. That conclusion is neither complete nor mature. Is the truth really that remarkable? I think we can look at it by using a method of contradiction. Just look at how hard the Chinese Communist Party works to block the truth. They invest billions, hundreds of billions of dollars in a national level firewall. And it's not just at the national level. Each province also builds its own provincial firewall. So back when I was setting up the shortwave radio network for China in the 2010s, people would ask me, does anyone even listen to shortwave radio anymore? Today, I tell you, just look at the great firewall the CCP uses to jam shortwave broadcast, and you'll know whether this is useful or not. The CCP's shortwave jamming, even back then, had already surpassed the scale of the former Soviet Union. As you all know, shortwave broadcasting, what is shortwave? It's just shortwave. It's a kind of show, right? The signals transmitted in this frequency band, well, a single 100-watt shortwave radio transmitter can broadcast from around China's borders into China, and people inside can hear it. But for China to jam it, they need to use transmitters with 100,000 watts or 200,000 watts, even 500,000 watt transmitters to jam those signals. Because these kinds of transmitters consume an enormous amount of electricity, and they also require a huge area of land. In fact, for some of these shortwave transmitters used by the Chinese Communist Party, they even need to have the military stationed there because they're worried someone might try to seize them. So the cost is extremely high. So with shortwave radio, it's known the signal's content isn't what matters. Why does the CCP invest so much to block it? For the internet, the censorship layers and investment are massive. With endless resources being poured in, if the truths the Chinese Communist Party is trying to cover up weren't important, would they really go to all this trouble? Right? If we think about it the other way around, the very things they're trying to cover up are actually the CCP's biggest weak spot. This is the most vulnerable part of their regime, because once people hear the truth, something will definitely change in their hearts. Even if they don't take action right away, their hearts have already changed. What does it mean to say, he who wins the people's hearts wins the world? Why did the Soviet Union collapse in just a few days in 1991? It's because the truth had already been spreading for decades. The Radio Free Europe, Voice of America, and other free radio stations, the truth had already taken root and started to grow in the hearts of people in the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe. So when the opportunity came, people acted because of the truth they held in their hearts. That's why I've never lost hope in the power of truth. This isn't just my ideal or belief, it's reason and logic that support us in helping to spread the truth. By doing so, we're planting seeds of hope, and these seeds will definitely take root, grow, and eventually bear fruit. Just because we haven't seen the fruit yet doesn't mean that planting seeds is useless. Let me give another example. It's like walking through a long, dark tunnel. Actually, this isn't just about the Chinese Communist Party. Many times in life, when we face difficulties, it's the same. You keep moving forward, and in your heart, you have to fight against the doubt of whether you can make it through, right? But when you finally reach the end of the tunnel, you've already made it to the end, 95% of the way is behind you, but it's still pitch black in front of you, isn't it? But you've already come 95% of the way. You're almost there. I think that's what the journey to change China is like. So spreading the truth is the best way to change China. Here, I want to once again call on our overseas Chinese friends, my viewers, to care about and join this cause to help spread the truth. This includes talking to your friends and family back in China, telling them the truth, giving them a book, recommending a program to them, or even helping them get around the Great Firewall, helping them seek out and read the truth for themselves. Overseas Chinese who enjoy freedom and face no risk are in the best position to help the people of China. Sun Yat-sen once called overseas Chinese the mother of the revolution during the corrupt Qing dynasty, and they later funded the Xinhai Revolution. Back then, overseas Chinese were less wealthy than Chinese Americans are today. Most in the US were lower middle class, but they were eager to help Sun Yat-sen in his revolutionary cause. Now there are more overseas Chinese with significantly greater wealth. Today, no one's asking for money, for weapons, or violent revolution. There's no risk now. With just a little extra cash, you can help expose the truth the CCP has hidden for a century. By freely spreading information back into China, we can help bring about positive change in the country. I think this is such a wonderful thing. So once again, I want to recommend that overseas Chinese support the Unblock the Chain project that we've been promoting. Because friends in China face two main obstacles when trying to bypass the firewall. First, they need to download a piece of software, but they're afraid to do so. They don't know what it might mean for them, and this alone stops about 98% of Chinese people from getting around the firewall. Second, if you want to keep bypassing the firewall and keep using a certain VPN, you have to pay for it. Paying for it is too risky for their parents. Their parents could actually get caught by the police. So with one link bypass, you just send a link to them, whether it's through a text message on their phone, on WeChat, or even by email, and all they have to do is click it to open it. Once opened, it could be overseas articles, programs, or even this current program. They don't need to install any software, reducing their fear. This bypass project is funded by overseas Chinese, making it free for them. This way, payments are untraceable, so they can freely bypass the firewall. Helping more Chinese people get around it is key to changing minds and China itself. It's a vital investment in China's future. So I've always been calling on all overseas Chinese who are able to give their strong support. These donations are nonprofit and tax deductible. At the same time, a report will also be generated. Actually, not long ago, we did provide some reports that were quite detailed, but later on, the CCP got hold of them as well. They specifically target circumvention tools and will come up with countermeasures. Right now, we're revising this report so that you can see the impact of your donation, but at the same time, the CCP won't be able to figure out the technical details of the circumvention project, so there are some adjustments being made. But regardless, I still hope everyone can support us. Let me say one last thing. I've talked a lot about news from the Trump administration, including their attitude toward the CCP. As you can see, it's the most novel stance among all previous US administrations. They also said they've already established a project to open up the CCP's internet, right? There was news about that a while ago, but there hasn't been any progress since then. Because no matter what, China's issues are still considered foreign affairs to them. They can show support, they can make statements, but when they're facing so many conflicts, both at home and abroad in the US that need to be dealt with, we can't expect them to make changing China their top priority. China's issues need to be addressed by the Chinese people themselves. And as the saying goes, heaven helps those who help themselves, right? This applies to both Taiwan and China. If we work hard and achieve real results, and that's when people will truly admire us and will attract more substantial support. All right, maybe I went a bit off topic with that commentary. If you agree, then thank you for watching. Okay, now let me talk a bit about a few things President Trump said a couple of days ago, which are also pretty important. I'll share them with everyone. This was on June 3rd, the day before yesterday. When President Trump was interviewed by the media in the Oval Office at the White House, he said a few things. Since there were questions, one reporter asked about communism. Trump said that communism first relies on tempting people to gain the support of voters or the public, and then their policies will cause the country, states or cities end up going into decline. Maybe later, after thinking it over, Trump went back and posted about it again on his Truth Social platform, emphasizing this point. What he said was that communism is always, in the early stages, supported by voters, or as they call them, in quotes, the people. They get support from voters, from the people, but in the end, the country, state, and city all go to hell. There's severe violence, things that have never been seen before start happening. So overall, the country will collapse and fall into poverty, filth, and crime. President Trump said, remember, first comes shocking popularity, and then inevitably comes death and even destruction. So actually, when it comes to American presidents commenting on communism, there really hasn't been a president who spoke about it like this, who talked about the threat of communism. So President Trump and his administration truly understand communism inside and out, and this clear understanding is actually America's shield for national security today. Why do I say that? Because the most terrifying kind of war is the one where you have no defenses at all. The enemy is attacking us, and we have no idea that it's even happening. We just go on living as usual. This is exactly what the United States has faced over the past few decades, attacks from communism in all sorts of forms, constantly changing its face and its banner. Americans simply don't realize it. This is what you call an undefended city. So today, I want to talk about how President Trump and his team have become aware of communism. They have a very clear understanding of what's happening in America and what lies beneath it all. Oh, let me say this again, okay? The most important job of the President of the United States is to defend and protect America, not to protect China. So it's up to the Chinese people to take care of China themselves. But I think President Trump's attitude here is really worth mentioning to everyone again. Then President Trump posted another tweet saying, hey, has anyone ever seen happy communism? Basically, no one is happy. People spend their whole lives fighting, and in the end, they just turn on each other. Anyway, it's pretty interesting, President Trump's perspective on this.